Okay, guys, I'm placing a new order to sell short Swiss franc at 0.886615. Just right here. Okay, let's see how long it will take until it will get executed. Position open for Swiss franc 0.88615. It's a short position. So anybody who followed the trade, they should know why position was opened, and let's wait until we'll get a profit. Yeah.
Here's where we stand. The S&P 500 index is up by 45 points now. That is a gain of 1.2%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 357, up 1.2%. NASDAQ up 120 points, up by 1%. 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold up 1.4%, rallying $25.50 the ounce to $18.52. And crude West Texas Intermediate up 0.7%, $47.30 a barrel. Bristol-Myers Squibb shares advancing after Goldman Sachs Group added the drug maker to its conviction buy list. Shares of Bristol-Myers Squibb up now by 4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, really appreciate that. We are up to date on the world of business. There's so much going on when it comes to a vaccine. Keep in mind, global coronavirus cases passing 73 million, deaths surpassing 1.62 million. For more on what he is seeing is Dr. Stephen Corwin. He's president and CEO of New York Presbyterian Hospital, who the New York Times called in the spring the CEO at the center of New York's coronavirus crisis. He, I should point out, the first confirmed case in the New York area was in one of New York Presbyterian's hospitals in southern Westchester. Dr. Corwin joining us on the phone in New York City. Dr. Corwin, thank you. So nice to have you here with Tim and myself. How are you, and what are you seeing when it comes to COVID cases right now?
Well, thanks, Carol and Tim, for having me on. We're seeing a significant increase in COVID cases. We're at about 25% of what our peak was in the April timeframe, and we expect it quickly to go to the 30-35% range by Christmas time, if not a little bit after. So we're seeing a significant uptick. The good news is that people are less sick with the virus as we see it. During April, we had a mortality rate in the hospital of about 20%. Extraordinary. Now it's down to about 5%, which is still horrific, especially if it's your loved one, but much less than April. So I would say we've got a rough 4 to 6 weeks ahead of us, but I think that we'll get through it, especially as we start vaccinating people.
Quick follow-up. Do you anticipate that we're going to get back to those levels in terms of hospitalizations and cases? Well, we are there, but in terms of hospitalizations that we saw back in the spring?
We hope not. We're clearly mindful of that. Our modeling would show that we would peak in the middle of January, unless we have a really terrible Christmas season in terms of people traveling and avoiding social distancing and masking. We still haven't seen the full peak of what happened in Thanksgiving. So that really is a variable that relates to this directly. So certainly no one wants to go back to where the city was in April, and we certainly don't. And so, again, until we get mass vaccination, masking, social distancing, washing your hands, all the things you keep hearing about become really critical. And I empathize with our elected officials in terms of how much of a lockdown do you need to have versus not. I think a lot of it depends on how much virus is circulating.
Dr. Corwin, Why has the mortality rate gone down so much? Is it because of what we've learned, what you've learned since March, since April? Is it because the hospital is not strained in the same way? Is it because of therapeutics?
I think first, the answer to your question is I really don't know, to be honest with you. I do think that we certainly know how to take care of the patients better. Remdesivir, steroids, they may not be game changers, but we know how to use these drugs. With the masking and social distancing, are people getting less of a viral load when they get sick? We've certainly seen a shift to a younger demographic who tends to be less sick with the virus. And to your point, any system that gets overwhelmed, it becomes more difficult to save lives. So the ability to not get the hospital overwhelmed, I think, plays into it as well. So all of the above, but it's going to take us a while to sort through this. The virus becoming less virulent, we don't see that, but that's going to take time for us to figure out.
One thing that you just said really struck me. People wearing masks, that you get less of a viral load. I haven't heard that before. What does that mean?
Well, remember, masks aren't totally effective, but it helps to filter out particles, and so we use the N95 masks when we're caring for patients, and that clearly prevents inhalation of the virus particles. So wearing a surgical mask not only protects the person that you would be breathing on, but also helps to protect you. And if you get less of a viral load, you may have a milder infection than if somebody gave you a full viral load, which is clearly what we saw in the beginning of the pandemic.
Right. It's so simple, but it does make a difference. Hey, what do you make, Dr. Corwin? A new mutation of COVID-19 turned up in, I guess, more than 1,000 infected patients in the UK and was being blamed for more rapid spread of the contagion. Does that make you a little nervous?
It does. I mean, I think that we know that the virus has many, many mutations. I mean, this is not the first one. When people went on holiday this summer, they came back with a variation from Spain, which appeared to be more virulent and caused wider spread. So this is not surprising. Viruses, like anything else, mutate over time. The fortunate aspect for us vis-a-vis the vaccine is the spike protein is the key in terms of inducing immunogenicity. And so knowing the spike protein and developing the mRNA towards the spike protein, I think we're in pretty good shape regardless of the variations now in terms of making sure that the vaccination will be very effective.
Right, because that's what I've heard, that the current vaccines still will work on these mutations. Is that correct?
That's correct. As far as I know, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And I think that because the spike protein has not changed.
Right.
So it's not the mutation profile is not what we see in influenza, and I think that's encouraging. And we're very bullish on the mRNA platform and the vaccine, both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine.
All right, Dr. Corwin, if you can just sit tight for a second. We have to do a little bit of world and national news, but we're going to come back. Dr. Corwin, what a great insight into terms of what's going on and just the different kind of pieces that we're hearing when it comes to the virus right now.
And look, great news about the vaccine.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear he's optimistic about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Stephen Corwin, we'll come back to him, President and CEO of New York Presbyterian Hospital, joining us on the phone in New York City. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic, and this is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic of Bloomberg Quick Take. We're going to get right back to Dr. Stephen Corwin, President and CEO of New York Presbyterian Hospital. Such great insight, and obviously has seen so much, difficult times, and just giving us some great insight, Tim, on potentially what's to come.
Yeah, and then, look, I mean, we'll get to him in a second. I was happy we left that interview, the first part of the interview, with optimism about the spike protein in the vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. All right, let's get back to the world of business and Charlie Pellet.
And I thank you very much. Stocks are holding at the best level of the day on this Tuesday here, halting the longest slump since September. Speculation is mounting that Congress will agree on a federal spending package. S&P rebounding from a 4-day slide. Here's where we stand. The S&P up 44 now. As I mentioned, at or near session highs, a gain of 1.2%. We've got the Dow up 357, up 1.2%. NASDAQ up 121 now, higher by 1%, bringing its year-to-date gain now to 40%. The 10-year down 8/30 seconds, 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold up 1.4%, 18.52 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.4%, 47.63 a barrel. The FDA says Moderna's vaccine is safe and effective for preventing COVID-19, clearing the way for a second shot to quickly gain emergency authorization, an add to the country's sprawling immunization effort. Moderna shares, they are trading lower, though, right now. Moderna's down by 5.1%. Vaccines are rolling out across the U.S. Frontline healthcare workers and nursing home residents getting the very first shots. Dr. Amish Adalja is senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
So far, so good. But remember, this is when we're just kind of vaccinating healthcare workers and nursing home residents, so they're kind of a captive audience, much easier to do. Many healthcare workers can be vaccinated at hospitals where they don't have to worry as much about the cold chain. When the real challenge comes is when we're vaccinating people that live in the community and more of the general population. So right now, I suspect everything is going as expected. Hopefully, I'll be vaccinated by the end of this week.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Among some of the other vaccine names, Pfizer shares, they're trading lower as well today, down by 1.4%. BioNTech is up 1.9%, and AstraZeneca, the ADR, is up by 0.9%. Recapping, equities are trading higher, holding at session highs. S&P up 45, up 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Let's get right back to Dr. Stephen Corwin, President and CEO of New York Presbyterian Hospital, on the phone in New York City. So, Dr. Corwin, I want to ask you, when you were interviewing the Times back in May, you noted that our assumptions around pandemic preparations were flawed. Are there assumptions we are making right now about this wave of the COVID breakout, this other wave, another wave, and about the distribution of the vaccine and the impact that will have? Might some of those assumptions be flawed as well?
Well, anytime you're doing probabilistic analysis, there can always be flaws in the model. What I would say, though, is we grossly underestimated pre-pandemic the amount of protective equipment we would need for personnel protective equipment. We have over 90 days of supply for every major category of that. We had issues in terms of, do we have enough ventilators? We clearly don't have that issue now. We know how to create extra ICU beds, and we know how to create staffing models that protect our patients. So from that standpoint, we're much better off. Where I think that we can make a mistake as a country is to assume that the vaccine's here, we can let down our guard, and let's go back to business as usual. It's going to take a while for us to get to herd immunity, and so we've got to do two things simultaneously. Be really stringent about the guidelines and separating ourselves from each other, as tough as that may be, and let people get vaccinated and educate the population on the vaccine. We have a lot of the population is skeptical of the vaccine. Our populations of color who've been experimented upon in the past are skeptical of the vaccine. So we've really got to educate the population as to the safety and the efficacy of the vaccine. And then hopefully by the spring, we'll be at a point where we can really start to get out of this.
Dr. Corwin, I want to know about the hospital's finances and the financial health of the hospitals that you oversee. I know they took a big hit earlier this year with elective surgeries canceled and being put off, but how do they stand today?
Well, we're fortunate. Our balance sheet, we're AA rated. We have a very strong balance sheet. But on a base of $9 billion, we typically would have a margin of between 3 and 4%. We're going to lose close to $800 million this year.
Wow.
We had to put about $300 million into our employees, child care, bus service, meals, bonuses, and we're proud that we were able to do that. I think we'll get better next year, but a lot of it depends upon the economy coming back to normal and people being able to move about freely.
Well, and when do you think we will be moving around freely? Is it next summer? Is it next fall?
I hope by next summer we really see that. I hope that by May we've got mass vaccination. I think a lot of it depends, quite frankly, on the distribution mechanism of the vaccine, some of the storage issues with the vaccine. I think the incoming administration will be laser focused on making sure that we get the vaccine into arms, and I think that's really critical. The Pfizer vaccine, we're very happy to give because as an institution, we have plenty of freezer storage for minus 80 degrees. That's much more challenging if you're trying to give vaccine in the community. The Moderna vaccine is easier to store, and some of the later vaccines will be easier to store. But I think that's going to be a challenge for us logistically.
Hey, just got about a minute left. When does the mass public, what's the rollout look for the rest of us eventually when that comes? Is it that you're going to get a call from your doctor, or they're going to call up people based on age? How are they going to do it? What do we know about that, if anything, at this point? Just quickly.
I think you have to assume that what's going to happen is once we do the healthcare workers and the nursing home residents, you'll have a balancing act between essential workers and then people over the age of 70, maybe over the age of 65, and people with significant comorbid conditions. If you're a healthy 35-year-old, you're going to be towards the end of that line, if you will. So I think you're going to be talking about age, comorbidities, and essential workers. And we know that our essential workers are at risk, whether you're working in the subway, a grocery store, whether you're a longshoreman, whether you're a truck driver. So I think that's really critical for us to get the economy going better.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Corwin, thank you so much. I know things are crazy and you're busy, so that you carved out so much time for us. Thank you so much. Be well and stay safe for you and your team and your families. Dr. Stephen Corwin, he's president and CEO of New York Presbyterian, joining us on the phone in New York City. All right, let's get to world and national news. For that, it's over to Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is now accepting Joe Biden's victory after yesterday's results from the Electoral College, showing Biden with 306 votes, well over the needed 270.
The Electoral College has spoken. So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden. The President-elect is no stranger to the Senate. He's devoted himself to public service for many years.
McConnell had declined to acknowledge Biden's win until now, saying that President Trump was entitled to pursue his claims in court. Well, more Americans are being vaccinated today. A second vaccine is a step closer to approval by week's end. And scientists are lending their voices to persuade one and all to be vaccinated when their turn comes. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more from Washington.
Vaccine development may have been rushed, but the testing on thousands of volunteers has not been. Robert Califf, former commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, said in a Bloomberg interview.
Everything that happened was recorded. It's there in the public view. It's been analyzed independently by the FDA. people should really be comfortable that this is a safe and effective vaccine. We'll see a gradual reduction in the transmission of the virus as the number of people who are vaccinated increases.
In the interim, Dr. Califf said wearing masks and social distancing will continue to save lives. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Lawmakers still working on a COVID relief bill. They'll be meeting this afternoon to discuss the latest proposal, totaling $748 billion. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Tim Stanovic of Bloomberg Quick Take. And Tim, man, I feel like this is the conversations we constantly have about, you know, we watch the market hitting records. We talk about companies, especially those big tech companies, the FANG stocks, individuals who are making money and not really feeling a lot of the economic impact of the virus.
Yeah, I mean, one of those people is Mackenzie Scott, formerly Mackenzie Bezos.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, who announced today that she's donated $4.1 billion to more than 350 groups in the last few months. Which is really, really impressive. Right. 384 organizations across all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. She put out a Medium post, and she says this pandemic has been a wrecking ball in the lives of Americans already struggling. Economic losses and health outcomes alike have been worse for women, for people of color, and for people living in poverty. So kudos that she is, you know, spreading around her wealth to help those that are less fortunate. She is the world's 18th richest person. I have to say, in this story by our Sophie Alexander, she's got Scott does, a $60.7 billion fortune, which is from a 4% stake in Amazon.com. And she got that from her divorce. Her wealth, though, this is the number that just was like, whoa. Her wealth has risen $23.6 billion this year. Because of Amazon's stock price increase and market cap increase as the company has just fared this pandemic so well. This gift that she's given in the last few months, these gifts, they build on this idea that she put out earlier this year, where she said that she would have this team of advisors. And one thing that I found fascinating about this is that in her post on Medium, which is actually like a really long post, she goes into the details of why and how she chose these organizations, which I hope has the idea, and maybe she thinks the same thing, to inspire others to give to these organizations. Yeah, so give some kind of, it's more meat than just saying, here, I'm just putting out this money, but here's why, and here's what they're doing, which is really, really, I feel like the more information we have, hopefully it'll spur others to do that. Interesting. Check it out at Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks continue to hold at session highs. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all rallying by 1.1% or more. Let's get right to the numbers. I'll give you the why in a moment. Here with the S&P up 47 now at 36.95, up 1.3%. The Dow's up 372, also up 1.3%. NASDAQ's up 130 points. That is a gain of 1.1%. The NASDAQ 100 index up by 0.9%. Dow Transports, they're up by 1.1%. Stocks have halted the longest slump since September. Speculation is mounting that Congress will agree on a federal spending package. S&P rebounding from a 4-day slide. Again, recapping, we do have equities higher across the board here. 10-year yield 0.92%. Gold up 1.4%. 18.52 the ounce. Crude up 1.4%. 47.62 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic, and we love Sean Donnan, yes, for his reporting, and especially when he can weave in the 1968 zombie classic Night of the Living Dead to tell a really weighty story about the American economy facing a zombie recovery. I know you caught up with him over on Quick Take earlier today.
We did earlier, and Carol, we're going to get to Sean and Joel in just a sec, but I mean, this story, it puts a name in a story to the people who have been affected by the pandemic and by the lack of movement in Washington, which is something we talk about all the time, but we don't meet the people who've been affected.
Right, really like drilling down, and that's what Sean is so good at. Let's bring in Sean. He's Bloomberg News Senior Trade and Globalization Reporter reporting for Bloomberg Business Week. He is with us on the phone in Maryland, along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber on the Access line in Brooklyn. And Joel, it's just a reminder, we talk about these big macro stories, but it's people, it's companies, it's small businesses behind it all.
Yeah, and Sean's been like singularly focused and obsessed with Pennsylvania for several months, and for good reason.
I'm placing a stop on profit for Swissy from this position at 1.88585. Okay, 5. Right here, okay?
Sean.
Well, I didn't find any zombies. It's actually, turns out, been a bad year for zombies, like a lot of us. The Living Dead Museum and Gift Shop in Evans City, which was there to take advantage of tourists who come from around the world to visit this place, which kind of gave birth to the American zombie genre, has shut down. And it's shut down because of the pandemic, and so it is no longer. It's not been a good year for zombies. I think, this story is as I was thinking about this story, I was really thinking about not so much the people who've felt the most extreme impact of the economic side of the pandemic, those who've lost their job, those who have joined the bread lines, those who have really or lost loved ones.
A close position at 0.88585.
Beforehand, and that's really what you find in Butler County, which is home to Evans City. It's a suburban county of Pittsburgh. It at the aggregate level looks like a place that is doing better than the rest of America. When it comes to unemployment, certainly. The unemployment rate there in October was 5.9%, which is a full percentage point better than the national rate was in October. And yet you scratch the surface and you discover all of these people who are surviving in a world of kind of curtailed ambitions. The guy who ran the Living Dead Museum and Gift Shop in Evans City started the year thinking he was going to be expanding his business. Instead, he's shutting down that location in Evans City. You go down the street and you talk to people who run one of the local sports bars there. Business is down 60%. You wander short distance out of town, and you run into a company called FiberCon, which makes these little bits of steel that give the kind of reinforced concrete. If you're building a factory floor, you're going to be using those little bits of steel. Their business is down by a third. And you find that same story over and over again in Butler County and in a lot of places in America right now. And that's the kind of that grind, that economic grind that we're stuck in right now.
Yeah, I want to stay on that theme because one of the companies that you spoke to was Ed Beans Incorporated. This is a coffee roaster in Cranberry Township, and they own a regional chain of coffee shops called Crazy Mocha. They did get more than $500,000 in a PPP loan back in April, but it wasn't enough, right?
Yeah, and and that's one of the themes that I think is kind of front of mind right now here in Washington is